You think she's avoiding you, but what if the truth is far more unsettling? What if the silence, the distance, the hesitation you sense from her isn't rejection at all, but the burden of emotions she doesn't know how to deal with? Listen carefully, because most men get this completely wrong. When a woman truly feels something deep for you, it doesn't always look like closeness. It doesn't always look like effort. Sometimes it looks like confusion, inconsistency, even distance. And that contradiction, that's where men lose their power, because they react emotionally instead of understanding what's really happening beneath the surface. See, attraction at a high level isn't calm, it's not logical. It disrupts her internal balance. When she starts liking you too much, you stop being just a guy in her world. You become a risk, a possibility, something that could either lift her up or completely shake her emotions. And that's where things shift, because now she's not just interacting with you, she's managing how you make her feel. That delayed reply, it's not always disinterest. Sometimes she stared at your message longer than she should have. Typed something, deleted it, typed again, then closed the app because it felt like too much. Not because she doesn't care, but because she suddenly cares more than she's comfortable with. That moment when she pulls back right after things felt perfect. You felt the connection, the laughter, the eye contact that lingered just a second too long, and then she disappeared. Colder, distant, different, and you thought, I messed it up. But what if you didn't? What if that exact moment when everything felt right was the moment she realized you could actually matter to her? That's the moment fear enters, because the deeper a woman feels, the more she becomes aware of what she could lose. And unlike surface-level attraction, deep emotional interest forces her to face vulnerability. And vulnerability is something most people aren't trained to handle. So instead of leaning in, she hesitates. Instead of showing more, she controls it. Instead of moving closer, she creates space. Not because she wants distance, but because she's trying to slow down what she feels. And here's where most men fail. They see distance and they chase harder. They feel inconsistency and they demand clarity. They sense her pulling back and they panic. But all that does is confirm her fear. Because now, instead of you being a grounded presence, you become another emotional pressure she has to manage. And the more pressure she feels, the more she convinces herself to step back, even if part of her wants to step forward. You have to understand this truth. When a woman doesn't care, she's consistent in her absence. But when she cares too much, that's when her behavior becomes unpredictable. Hot and cold, close then distant, engaged then quiet. Not because she's playing games, but because she's fighting an internal conflict you can't see. And if you misread that conflict, you'll respond the wrong way every time. You'll think she's losing interest, when in reality, she's overwhelmed by it. And the difference between those two interpretations, that difference determines whether she moves closer to you or slowly disappears from your life. You've been taught that when a woman likes you, it should be obvious, clear, effortless. But real emotional attraction doesn't follow clean patterns. It creates tension. And the more she feels, the more she starts protecting herself from those feelings, especially if she senses you could actually affect her life. Watch her behavior closely, not emotionally. Because when she likes you too much, she begins to edit herself around you. She becomes more aware of what she says, how she sounds, how she appears. Not in a performative way, but in a careful way, as if every interaction with you suddenly carries weight. You'll notice it in small moments. She might go quiet in conversations where she used to be playful, not because she's bored, but because she's thinking more, feeling more, processing more. You're no longer just someone she talks to. You're someone whose opinion could matter. And that shift changes everything. There will be times she seems slightly nervous, even if she hides it well. A slight pause before responding, a subtle change in tone. Maybe she laughs, but it feels a little more control than before. That's not disinterest, that's awareness. You've entered her emotional space. And here's where it gets complicated, because at the same time she feels drawn to you, she's also evaluating you. Not in a judgmental way, but in a protective way. She's asking herself questions she won't say out loud. Is he consistent? Is he emotionally stable? Will he change once I get closer? Can I trust what I'm starting to feel? And until she feels safe answering those questions, she will hold parts of herself back. That's why you might feel like she's almost there, but not fully. Like she's interested, but not committing. Present, but not fully open. And if you're not grounded, that ambiguity will start pulling at you. You'll want certainty, you'll want reassurance, you'll want her to meet your energy with the same intensity. But when you try to force that, you disrupt the very thing she's trying to figure out. Because emotional safety isn't built through pressure, it's built through consistency. She's watching how you handle the uncertainty. She's noticing if you become reactive when she pulls back slightly, if your tone changes, if your attention becomes conditional, if your energy becomes unstable. Because if a small shift from her causes a big reaction from you, it tells her something important. It tells her that getting closer to you might come with emotional weight she's not ready to carry. And that's when she slows down even more. But if you stay steady, if your presence doesn't fluctuate based on her momentary distance, something different happens. She starts to relax. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually. Because now, instead of feeling like she has to manage your emotions and hers, she only has to understand her own. And that gives her space to lean in naturally. This is where most men get confused. They think attraction grows through intensity, through constant communication, through emotional highs. But real attraction, the kind that makes her choose you long-term, grows through emotional control, through your ability to stay centered, even when things feel uncertain. Because when she likes you too much, she's already dealing with internal pressure. And if you become another source of pressure, she won't move closer. She'll protect herself. But if you become the one place where things feel calm, clear, and grounded, you stop being a question in her mind, and you start becoming the answer she's been trying to understand. There's a moment most men miss, and it's the moment everything quietly changes. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, there's no clear signal, no obvious shift you can point to. But if you pay attention, you'll feel it. That subtle transition where she stops seeing you as just another guy and starts experiencing you as something more significant. And strangely, that's when her behavior can become even more confusing. Because when her feelings deepen, she doesn't always move closer in the way you expect. Sometimes she becomes more selective with her attention. Not less interested, just more careful with how she expresses it. She might not text you all day, but when she does, there's thought behind it. She might not always initiate, but when you meet, her presence feels different. Warmer, more focused, like she's really there with you. Not distracted, not half engaged. That's not distance, that's depth trying to stabilize itself. But here's where your mindset has to shift. If you measure her interest only by frequency, how often she texts, how quickly she replies, how consistently she shows up, you'll completely misread what's happening. Because high interest doesn't always increase quantity. Sometimes it increases intensity, and intensity is quieter. It's more controlled. It doesn't need constant expression to exist. This is why she may pull back right after a meaningful interaction. You felt it. The conversation went deeper than usual. There was a moment, maybe brief, maybe subtle, where the connection felt real, not surface level, not casual. And then afterwards, she became less available, less expressive, almost like she's resetting something. And in a way, she is, because depth creates exposure, and exposure forces her to process what she just felt. Did I reveal too much? Am I getting attached too quickly? Is he going to stay the same or change later? These thoughts don't come from disinterest. They come from emotional investment trying to protect itself. So she slows down, not to lose you, but to understand what you mean to her. Now think about how most men react in that moment. They feel the pullback and they immediately try to restore the previous intensity. They text more, they seek reassurance, they bring up the shift. What happened? And without realizing it, they collapse the space she needed to process her emotions. Because instead of giving her time to come back on her own, they try to pull her back, and that changes the dynamic. Suddenly, you're no longer the grounded presence she was starting to trust. You become someone who needs emotional consistency from her to feel stable. And that subtly shifts attraction, because now, instead of her leaning toward you, she feels responsible for maintaining your emotional state. And the moment she feels that responsibility, she begins to detach, even if she doesn't want to. This is the paradox most men never understand. The more she likes you, the more space she sometimes needs to feel safe with those emotions. Not permanent distance, just room to process without pressure. And if you can give that without losing your center, you create something rare. You become the one person she doesn't feel overwhelmed by. The one connection that doesn't demand, doesn't rush, doesn't destabilize her. And over time, that's the connection she won't want to lose. There's something deeper happening beneath all of this. Something most men never even consider. When she starts liking you too much, it's not just about attraction anymore. It becomes about control. Not control over you, but control over herself. Because strong emotions don't just feel good. They make her question her judgment. They make her slow down. They make her wonder if she's about to repeat a mistake she once promised herself she'd never make again. And that's why her behavior can feel so contradictory. One moment she's open, present, connected. You feel it in the way she looks at you, the way she listens, the way she leans in without even realizing it. Then suddenly she's guarded again, less expressive, less available, slightly harder to read. And you think something changed, but the truth is something didn't change. Something surfaced. A memory, a past experience, a moment where she trusted too quickly and paid for it later. So now, even though she feels drawn to you, she's balancing that feeling against her own emotional safety. And that creates friction inside her. Part of her wants to move closer. Another part of her is saying, slow down, don't get carried away, don't lose control. And if you don't understand that internal conflict, you'll misinterpret her actions every time. You'll think she's inconsistent. You'll think she's unsure about you. You might even think she's playing games. But she's not playing with you. She's managing herself. And here's the part that requires discipline from you. You cannot take her fluctuations personally, because the moment you do, you react. And reaction breaks the frame she's trying to trust. Let's be honest. When she pulls back slightly, your instinct is to close the gap, to text more, to show more, to fix whatever you think just shifted. But from her perspective, that feels like acceleration when she's trying to slow down. And it creates pressure, not obvious pressure, not something she'll always call out. But internally, it feels like she's losing space to think clearly. So what does she do? She creates more distance. Not because she wants less of you, but because she needs more control over how fast things are moving. And this is where your restraint becomes powerful. Because if you can stay composed, if you can maintain your pace, your energy, your presence, without reacting to every subtle change in her behavior, you send a completely different message. You show her that you're not driven by emotional swings, that you don't need constant reassurance to stay grounded, that your interest isn't fragile. And that is rare, because most men reveal their instability the moment things feel uncertain. They chase when they feel distance. They overextend when they feel silence. They lose their center trying to regain control. But the man who doesn't react impulsively, the man who allows her space without withdrawing his presence, the man who stays steady while she's figuring herself out, he becomes different in her mind. Not just attractive, but safe. And safety, when combined with attraction, is what transforms interest into something real, something lasting, something she doesn't feel the need to run from, even when it scares her. There comes a point where her behavior will test you. Not intentionally, not manipulatively, but naturally. Because when she feels something real, she needs to understand if what she's feeling is safe to trust or dangerous to follow. And those tests don't look like questions. They look like moments. Moments where she pulls back slightly to see if you chase. Moments where she becomes less available to see if your energy collapses. Moments where she gives you less just to observe if you lose control trying to get more. Not because she's playing games, but because she's watching for patterns. Patterns that reveal who you are when things aren't perfectly smooth. Because anyone can be confident when everything is going well. Anyone can be calm when she's fully engaged, fully responsive, fully present. But who are you when there's silence? Who are you when there's uncertainty? Who are you when you don't feel in control? That's what she's paying attention to. And if you become reactive in those moments, if your tone shifts, if your behavior changes, if you start trying to force clarity or reassurance, you unknowingly answer her question. You show her that your stability depends on her consistency. And that makes her hesitate, because now, instead of feeling like she can relax into you, she feels like she has to maintain you. An emotional responsibility like that slowly kills attraction. But if you respond differently, if you stay the same person regardless of her temporary shifts, everything changes. When she pulls back, you don't chase, you stay centered. When she's less available, you don't overextend, you respect the space. When things feel uncertain, you don't demand clarity, you allow it to unfold. And that does something powerful in her mind. It removes pressure. It removes the fear that getting closer to you means losing control of her own emotional pace. And slowly, she begins to trust the connection. Not because you convinced her, but because you didn't disrupt her process. This is where attraction deepens into something stronger. Because now she's not just feeling something for you. She's observing consistency in you. She's seeing that you don't change based on her moods, that your presence isn't conditional, that your attention isn't desperate. And that kind of stability, it stands out because most men operate from reaction. They mirror her energy. They rise and fall depending on how she shows up. But the man who remains grounded, he becomes the constant in her emotional environment. And when a woman is navigating strong feelings, she naturally moves toward what feels stable. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually. She begins to open more. She becomes a little more consistent, a little more expressive, a little more willing to let her guard down. Not because you forced it, but because she no longer feels the need to protect herself from you. And that's when you realize something important. You didn't win her over by chasing. You didn't secure her interest by demanding more. You didn't create connection by controlling the outcome. You did it by mastering yourself when it mattered most. And this is where everything either comes together or quietly falls apart. Because eventually, she reaches a decision point. Not one she announces, not one she explains, but one she feels. A moment where all the observations she's been making about you, all the emotional calculations happening beneath the surface, begin to settle into a single question. Is this the man I can finally stop guarding myself against? And your answer isn't in what you say, it's in everything you've done up to this point. Did you stay grounded when things felt uncertain? Did you respect her space without disappearing? Did you remain consistent even when she wasn't fully predictable? Or did you react, chase, and lose control the moment things didn't go your way? Because from her perspective, it's simple. If you couldn't handle the early stages when things were light, undefined, still forming, then how would you handle something deeper? How would you handle real emotion, real connection, real vulnerability? That's why this phase matters more than you think. Because when a woman likes you too much, she doesn't just want you. She evaluates if wanting you is safe. And if you've shown her that being close to you doesn't come with emotional chaos, doesn't come with pressure, doesn't come with instability, something shifts inside her. She stops holding back. Not all at once, but enough for you to notice. Her messages become more natural. Her energy becomes more consistent. Her presence feels less guarded, more real. And you'll feel it, not as intensity, not as excitement, but as ease. That calm, quiet sense that she's no longer resisting what she feels, that she's allowing it, that she's choosing it. And here's the truth most men never hear. The goal was never to make her like you. The goal was to become the man she doesn't feel the need to protect herself from. Because when you reach that point, attraction stops being something fragile. It becomes something stable, something that grows without force, something that doesn't disappear the moment there's silence or space. And that's rare. Now, before you leave this video, I want you to be honest with yourself. When she pulls back slightly, when things feel uncertain, when you don't have full control, do you become more grounded or do you become more reactive? Because that answer is shaping every outcome you're experiencing right now.